Happy New Year, folks. Welcome to 2023, and welcome to the Fantasy and Frames pregame show for Week 17, the last pregame show of the 2022, now 2023 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and somehow, someway, he is with us this morning, coherent and in jubilation mode. Keith Fleming, your Georgia Dogs pulled it off last night at literally the stroke of midnight. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. How about them dogs? It was just crazy. And I try to tell people, as an Atlanta/Georgia fan, we've been on the wrong side of so many of those games. So it's really hard to believe that, the Alabama game last year was kind of the same deal where it seemed like it was over. And then Bennett just, you want to talk about a god on a campus, 25 years old, probably is never going to be a pro quarterback, but I don't think Stetson's ever going to have to work a day in his life if he doesn't want to. And he'll probably own a couple of dealerships and God knows what else in Athens before his life is over. But just an incredible game. I do feel bad for Buckeyes fans because, again, I've been there, but glad it's them on the losing side this morning and not us.
Yeah. What's the quarterback's name for Georgia? Stetson? Is that
Stetson Bennett? Yeah,
Stetson
25
Bennett?
years old, walk on. It's really an amazing story, and he's in the biggest moments, man. He just keeps coming up big, and this is a fan base that a year ago we wanted to get rid of him. All through the regular season, fans were clamoring for every 4 or 5 star recruit that we have, on the bench, and he's just continued to outperform what I think everybody thought. So good for him, good for the dogs, happy for UGA, and it's gonna be a good day, hopefully.
Absolutely, it's going to be. And if the way the Horned Frogs played against played versus Michigan is any example, this is going to be. Yesterday was the greatest semifinal day I think
Great
in the history
game.
of the college
Two
football
great
playoffs.
games. Yep.
And I think this national championship and next Monday is going to be utterly insane, and people are just going to be glued to their seats as they should because you got two good teams going at it. Speaking of two good teams going at it, folks, you have your fantasy football championship matchups this week. That's going to be two good teams going against each other. You have your opponent there, and you just need to win. However you get it, whether it's by 1 point or by 10 points, a win is a win. God forbid there's a stat correction that makes you lose by 2, but let's not. Yeah, we've all been on the receiving end of that one. For the better or for the worse. But that's why you're here. That's why you're listening to and watching the Fantasy and Frames pregame show. We go game by game, give you all the fantasy relevant players who we like for offense, for DFS, for IDP, you name it, and as well as, and most importantly, we answer your start and sit questions to get you ready for your matchups. And so, Keith, let's just jump into the first game here. We got at 1 o'clock. We got your Atlanta Falcons versus the. I know we're sticking with the Georgia theme here.
Oh, we were in a celebratory mood, Jorge.
Well, I think you may be in a celebratory mood.
No, we don't want to win. We want to be done. We don't want any more victories this year.
Yes, there is such a thing as not losing well. I think we were talking about that on Friday.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, thank you very much for joining us on Fourth and Frames, Keith. That was very clutch of you on Friday evening in an impromptu episode. Look, for the Arizona Cardinals, it's David Blau as the quarterback, I believe. No DeAndre Hopkins. This has to be a James Conner featured offensive attack here for the Cardinals, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. And we're a bad run defense. I think Joe loves to bring up this stat because he continues to pick running backs against my Falcons all season on the Daily Fix Pod, but we give up almost 4 yards on the ground before contact, in our worst games. There's been several this season. And, you got to like Blau more than what you saw with McSorley the last couple of weeks. Sure. And it's not like they don't have any receivers. I think Dortch has really, impressed people several times this season. Brown's a really good wide receiver. And but I do love Connor. He was, I think, my expensive tier, either running back or flex this week. He's 7,200 for DFS. He's a great play. I love Tyler Algier in this game. He's, I think, 5,200. And then, Drake London's another guy that should get a lot of attention and DFS this week. And I actually had a buddy ask me, and while we've got you right here and, your fantasy knowledge, he's
Sure.
in a PPR league, and he
Okay.
was asking me, would you start Drake London versus the Cardinals, or would you start Christian Kirk versus the Texans? And I told him I would probably start London because of the targets he's seeing. Who knows what the Jags are going to do? That they're playing for literally nothing today. Nate, come on, man. What the hell?
Hey, did I hear Atlanta Falcons talk? Man, oh man, 5 wins, 6 wins on the line. What is happening?
I'm good losing that now, Nate. I'm okay with being wrong about the 6 wins. That's what I just told Jorge. I don't want them to win.
How are you talking, sir?
I get excited. I don't have much. I'm feeling okay.
He's like, I'm going to troll Keith a little bit. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, you can't start 2023 with that little trolling action here.
We stayed up to watch that game last night intentionally, and we were so happy. I specifically told Carrie, I was like, when he misses this field goal, Keith will be in the best mood in the morning, and I'm going to join them. And she's like, okay. And it was, wow, horrendous. Continue. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I'm going to switch to screen too, because TCU sucks.
It's funny you mentioned that. Melissa was like, "Oh, well, are we not even going to watch the ball drop?" And I'm like, "Honey, it is 11:59 and 20 seconds, and they're about to tee off the field goal." No, but I did make it up to her because we kept watching the Ryan Seacrest show, and we got to the New Orleans countdown. I'm like, "See, there's the countdown. You got a countdown on New Year's. This is the one you wanted, but you got a countdown." Yeah, that didn't really go over so well, but she enjoyed the game. She was glued to her seat too, and she doesn't really watch a lot of college football outside of Penn State, so that was something. Anywho, sticking with the Cardinals.
Hey, did you hear that question? Do you think because my buddy's getting a championship PPR league, he's got for his third receiver either Drake London or Christian Kirk, and I told him I'd rather have London today than Kirk versus the Texans.
I mean, I know what you're saying. Historic for 16 weeks, we would have said Kirk every week. We don't know what's going on in the minds. We have to assume, kind of like you're feeling. It's like you want to be. I don't know what I'm trying to say. My brain's still a little scrambled this week. I want to say yes. I agree with you in that. That's a great.
It's not insane though, right?
It's not insane. No, not at all. I'm trying to pull up everything that has anything to counter that, and there's nothing that stands out to me.
There's a fine line between being cute and playing the right matchup,
right?
And I think we all suffer from over analysis by paralysis. Look, you got Trevor Lawrence, who is dealing with an injury but should be playing this week. He's been questionable all week. That's not boding well in the favor. Like, God forbid he re-injures whenever he needs to re-injure.
Joe brought up on the podcast he's got a terrible history versus the Texans. It's honestly the worst franchise he's played in his NFL career that he's played at least. He's had 3 starts, 0 wins, 3 touchdowns in 1 game. Other than that, he hadn't thrown a touchdown since. And it's just, to me, it's they're so bad against the run that you should run against them if you want to beat them.
Right.
And just London has seen it's his target share in Atlanta right now is outrageous since it's gone to Ritter. And Arizona's a bad secondary. So,
and the PPR nature of it.
Exactly. If it was not PPR, I probably would tell him I'd stick with Kirk. But PPR, I just think that, I think you could argue London has a higher floor and a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the target share that you're mentioning. Yeah. So it's kind of we referenced Dortch, but one would hope that you have better options as a flex, especially with David Blatt throwing the ball. So definitely a James Conner heavy game here, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, and Drake London for the Falcons here. Tyler Algier, 5,300 on DK. Outside of that on offense, are we starting anybody else here? Am I oblivious to anybody else? I'm not really feeling it. For defense, it's kind of crazy. Buda Baker's out for the rest of the season. He got placed on IR. There's the Isaiah Simmons. Nate, heading into this season, we were talking about how they're giving the keys to the linebacking car to Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons, and coincidentally enough, Isaiah Simmons has had some success for IDP over the course of the season, but he's not your traditional linebacker who just stays in the middle of the field and goes after the run. He kind of like plays all over the place, and so one has to wonder with Buda Baker going out this year, whether these last 2 weeks, whether or not they move him back into more of a coverage role, because we saw that during training camp where they were playing him with the DBs for a majority of the time, and everybody's like, "What? So he's moving to a defensive back now? What's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
So I'm concerned about his upside here.
Yeah, here's what I think. I think next year at this time, Isaiah Simmons won't even have linebacker eligibility. I mean, I don't think he deserves it this year, personally. If you look at his total snaps, he's been a nickel or a slot, and I don't even know the exact number, but I gotta think it's at least 75% of the time. And I gotta look, and I'll look it up to make sure that I'm not just blowing smoke out my butt. But it's consistently, that's where his utilization has been. That's where they want to line him up. I don't know if that's as a deep safety as much as it maybe a Buda Baker type role, right. But he, I don't know, him and Zaven Collins both. Zaven Collins has been a total letdown. Isaiah Simmons has at least been an upside because I think our expectations were so low going in that it's like, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up. So from here, and so like if you look as a corner, he has 778 snaps as a quote unquote cornerback, which is which is top 45 in the league. There's 36th, so he's a corner as far as I'm concerned until he starts playing linebacker snaps. But yeah, does that leave him on the field more? That's probably the better phrasing, and I think that answer is definite, and that's always an upside, especially if he inherits DB eligibility next year and stays in the same similar role. It's similar, not to the point exactly like L'Jarius Sneed by no means, but he shares some of that upside in the fact of where their positioning on the field is. Because if he's lining up in slot, he's lining up in more towards the line of scrimmage, there's more blitz opportunities, etc.
Here we go. We got a couple questions here on YouTube. We got Michael Bauer from the Dynasty Rewind. What's up, Mike? In the ship and he's torn. Jamal Williams or Chuba Hubbard? I like the matchup more with Jamal Williams versus the Bears than I do with Chuba, because then you have to, you're worried about splitting. I'm more concerned about the splitting of snaps between Chuba and Deonta Foreman, just how well the Chuba played last week, put up $125, has been involved in this two-headed attack for the Carolina Panthers, which is kind of funny because you think back to the day of Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams as the two-headed backs for the Panthers. Now you have, that's taking it way back, folks, versus Jamal Williams, who's just been playing lights out all season. What about you guys? What do you guys think?
I actually probably would lean Hubbard.
Okay.
Only because the Bears, I know they're a bad run defense too, but they are so bad against the pass.
Yeah.
And I really expect Goff to have a monster game today. I hope so, because I'm all in on him in all my DFS lineups.
Right.
Because I got a lot of combinations with him and St. Brown, double stacks with him, St. Brown and Shark. I even sprinkled Williams in a few lineups because he's so cheap. And I like what I've seen out of Hubbard the last few weeks. Like, he's been so explosive, and it's not like the Tampa run D is the Tampa run D that we're used to in the past.
A bit of air this week in the middle can kind of help with that aspect for Carolina. What about you? What are your thoughts, Nate?
Man, I have them so close to each other.
Yeah, it's very close.
And I do. It's on one side, I lean and I go, man, that point total in that Detroit-Chicago game is so high that there's a good chance that
That's a good point.
Jamal gets involved in that. But is that going to be, he's been very fortunate, I will say, with a lot of opportunities on people falling down at the 1 yard line.
Yes,
there is a invisible tripwire at the one that Dad Williams set up. He's like, I'm gonna get my son about 15 touchdowns.
It's like Jerome Bettis' last few years for the Steelers, man. Where it's like, what the fudge?
Exactly. It's uncanny. But I think I trust Jamal Williams a little bit more than I trust Chuba, especially considering from we got we got hype in week 15 because he saw 60% of the snaps compared to Deontay Foreman's 30, and then it normalized back again. I would lean Jamal Williams myself just because I feel more comfortable with. I feel like Detroit scoring, even though Carolina has been this, I mean, are they a fun Cinderella story or whatever we want to call them? Because the South is, no offense, but bad. But yeah, I don't know. What
Is
about
this
you,
a standard
Jorge?
league too,
Yeah.
or could Michael, if he's listening, can he answer that? Because if it's a standard, I'm with you. I definitely think it's probably Williams in that case because it's just the touchdown upside so much higher.
All right. Got a question here while we're waiting for that from Michael Bauer, who's playing 0 RB in week 17. Hey, you know what? It proved that it worked. So we got a question here from Tootsie Pop 6. What's up, Rachel? Would you start Lockett or Slayton today? Lockett coming off the broken hand. It's Bauer says it's PPR, so you're leaning.
I'd probably lean Hubbard, but it's so close that I honestly,
yeah,
it's just really, which one do you? I mean, I think to Nate's point though, he made a better case than I did. I just lean towards. I think Hubbard's going to score more, but I agree with you that the Lions game is going to have, I think, much more points, and that means it's much more likely that Williams scores a touchdown.
Right.
So actually, I'll go ahead and I'll change my answer. I'll lean Williams.
You don't have to change. I respect both sides. We didn't help Mike one bit. Sorry, Mike.
Going back to Tootsie Pop 6's question here, Lockett or Slayton. Lockett with the broken hand coming back against a tough Jets secondary, who even their wide receiver twos have had trouble there in production. Darius Slayton, definitely a boomer bust, but here's somebody that I think would benefit even better if he's available, and that's Richie James, who's been targeted, I want to say, 7 times, 8 times, 5 times the past few weeks, has been on Daniel Jones's radar. No Kenny Moore in the slot this week, which means that Julian Blackman will be coming up from free safety, who's been taking a majority of the slot snaps. He's been allowing the most passing yards out of any defensive back for the Colts this week. And just seeing the rapport that Richie James has had, if Richie James is on your waiver wire, I would feel more comfortable starting him than Slayton, to be honest with you. But I'm picking a Giants wide receiver in this matchup if you had to pick one versus, the Jets versus the Seahawks, who are taking on the Jets this week.
Man, I will say the one thing with the Giants is just difficult is they've now actually found 3 receivers
Hodgins,
that are.
Yeah, I was gonna say Hodgins has been great too.
And it's like it's this rotation that you look at, and you look at the total target share, and it's like 1 week Slayton is at 24, James is at 17, Hodgins is at 17. The next week Slayton's at 16, James is at 26, Hodgins is at 26. The next week Slayton's at 29. So it bounces back and forth. I think the upside is definitely there. I don't know if I want to trust Lockett with that finger and coming right back. So yeah, I would still lean Slayton even over James myself, but I would love to have James if he's available.
Let's see here. We got a question from Ron L. Tinsley. Welcome to the show. So I didn't get Pollard out of my lineup in time. Oh, God, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Suck.
Do I keep Greg Davis in or Brandon Ayuk?
He means Gabe, right?
Yeah. Okay. I was like, did I miss somebody of relevance that I'm not?
I worry the same thing.
So really, are you trusting Brock Purdy or are you trusting Josh Allen to deliver the ball? I trust Josh Allen more than I do Brock Purdy to get. I think Gabe Davis. I think this game tomorrow night on Monday Night Football is going to be a shootout. So I'm rolling with Gabe Davis. I know he's been wildly inconsistent, but if you could give us an idea whether or not it's PPR or non-PPR, that could help us a lot, Ronell. Because
I think he needs a big, obviously he needs a big gain because Pollard's out and Davis is the guy most likely to just go bananas. He's done it several times this year, and I agree with you that I think the Bengals-Bills games we missed. And the problem with the Raiders game is, I mean, goodness gracious, like I'm fascinated to see what happens in that game because you got Jared Stidham starting for the Raiders. That you can't run on the Niners. So right. I don't think the Raiders are going to have any offense. They're a terrible run defense the other way. So the Niners should be able to run on them. And it's like, how much are they going to throw in that game would be my concern. Because I love Kittle today and they're both great matchups and great plays. But like, what is their opportunity today in this kind of mismatch?
Yeah, see the fact that Reynolds just said it's PPR. Normally, I would kind of lean towards Ayuk just because I like the reception upside. That being the case, you brought it up perfectly. You kept Pollard in your lineup by accident. You need a big play. This is kind of a desperation move. So if you're going to go for a big play, I think you got to roll with Gabe Davis here this week. He says he also has Isaiah McKenzie on the bench. Yeah, I would still say Gabe Davis there. So.
And it'd be nice to have Davis going into Monday because even if you're down 15, 20, he's one of the few receivers that's not a star receiver that can put up that kind of game. We've seen it with ease. On like 2-3 receptions is a great part about Davis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hell, he's coming off of probably his best game in a while, a very long time, which is not a great thing, but man, we've seen. I know I'm the Chiefs fan, so of course I have that ingrained into my head. The upside.
He still scores touchdowns at a really high rate, though.
Yeah.
Hold on, Ronell. You have Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and Stephon Diggs in your side. Man, go Bills! I'm assuming you're a Bills fan, or that's just how the draft fell.
He's from New York. I know Ronell.
Oh, then there we go. We got Jared here on Facebook. Latavius Murray or Isaiah Hodgins.
Ooh, that's a good one, too.
That is a good one. I'm leaning Murray just because I think the Broncos are going to want to try and keep this kind of low scoring, which is not going to work in their favor.
Good luck.
But
your reasoning
they gave up
sound.
51 to the Rams last week, and we got friggin' Patrick Mahomes.
I know
Good
exactly.
luck.
Yeah.
If that's a half point PPR or PPR, I would lean Hodgins. Otherwise, I agree with you just because there's a good chance Murray might, get in the end zone. In a standard league, I'd probably play Murray. But if it's a PPR, half PPR, I'd rather play Hodgins just because he's caught, I think, at least 4 passes in like 4 out of the last 5 games.
Yeah. Oh, he's been wonderful. There's no doubt. I've been pretty blown away with the production that they've been able to sustain with multiple receivers, like we just talked about. And I just don't know how much I trust Latavius Murray to have a.
Actually, I'm sorry. He scored a touchdown in 3 of 4, to your point, Nate, and he's seen 4 red zone targets in the last 4 games. So I think I probably would lean Hodgins.
I would too.
Let's see here. Let's finish off this Atlanta-Arizona game on defense for the Falcons. Obviously, Rashaan Evans at linebacker.
Yep.
Grant at defensive back. If you had, assuming you don't have any, if he's your best option, obviously that's somebody you're rolling with versus.
Dude, I love Richie Grant. He's been very underrated. I think if you look over the last, I want to say last 4 or 5 weeks, he's really been just a consistent DB2. He hasn't. I doubt he's had a real bad game in quite some time as far as overall DB and like fantasy pro scoring and everything, because he just consistently gives you 6-7 tackles the last 3-4 weeks. I mean, hell, on the season, where he's the DB 12 on the season.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
wow.
So it's not like, I think that Richie Grant's name just kind of gets lost in translation because, again, I think a lot of that goes back. Man, last year at this time, we didn't know what position he wanted to play. Is he a safety? Is he a slot corner? Is he better just in a nickel role? What is that? And he's really come on. They've lined him up at the line of scrimmage now, and he's had tackle volume of 9 tackles, 6 tackles, 10 tackles. I'd love to see him get more in the pass deflection interception realm like he was early in the season, but that is a product of him lining up in the box in the line of scrimmage.
All right, let's go to this next game. 52.5, Bears and Lions. Hell, I even think Cole Kmet could have a good game this week. When I look at fantasy points allowed to the tight end position, I want to say the Lions.
He had a monster game versus him the first matchup.
Yeah. The Lions are giving up the 6th most fantasy points, averaging about 11.4. He is their tight end target. It's not like he's worrying about him in terms of pass blocking or anything like that. Like he is the receiving option. So I like him in this game. But of course, the big names. For this one, for the Detroit, Goff we like. Jamal Williams we talked about. St. Brown, I like Shark in this game. Yeah, on the flip side, we talk about Komet, we talk about Justin Fields. David Montgomery, like I can't honestly say you're sitting any of these players with Shark. Flexing I think is a good opportunity here. Am I missing anybody? Is the tight end for Detroit, whose name is escaping me right now? He had a good week last week. Not recommending him
No.
in championship week.
I didn't hear you say Swift's name, but I think that was just an oversight. I think, or maybe it's not because
I like versus this Bears. They give up huge chunk plays, and I mean, if you're considering playing Swift, I don't think you have a great other option. Probably right, and I mean this is as good of a matchup. And again, to your point, Nate, high scoring affair. That's always good because it's just more likely that if you have a guy in that game, they're going to score.
Yeah, go ahead, Jorge. What were you going to say, bud?
So, like in terms of like touches, both rushing attempts and receiving, we're talking about since week 14, 10, 17, 9. I mean, those are kind of inconsistent when you're looking at matchups. But I think you bring up a good point, Keith, as far as just this is going to be a high scoring game. Or at least that's what the experts are predicting. Excuse me.
These defenses are bad, really bad,
real bad.
Yeah. I guess for me personally, I'm a little bit more hesitant on Swift. But again, if he's your best option, you're rolling him out there. I think the upside is there for him, definitely. On the for IDP,
well, actually, can I real quickly for DFS?
Yeah, go for it.
The two QBs, in my opinion, in this game are the quarterbacks you should be playing this week. Fields, I know he's 7,900. People are going to freak out because last week he had his worst game of the year. It stopped a 7-game streak of 20 points or more on DraftKings. He only rushed for 11 yards. But in the first matchup versus Detroit, he scored 43 points. The Lions versus rushing quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, 90 yards a touchdown. Geno, 49 yards a touchdown. Daniel Jones, 50 yards a touchdown. Josh Allen, 78 yards and a touchdown. Lawrence had 32 yards rushing. Sam Darnold, 19 yards and a touchdown. 8 QBs have had a run of 15 yards or more versus his defense. And Fields in 3 games in a dome this year, 192 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, we know speed is so much different inside. I expect him to have a monster game. I love him at 7,900. You don't have to stack him in your DFS lineup, which is nice. But if you do, to your point, Jorge, we like stacking him with Komet at 4,500. And then Goff. The home road splits are absolutely insane. He's 5,600. At home, he has 20 touchdowns, averaging 2.5 per game. On the road, he has 6 total, averaging 0.85. Points per game on DraftKings at home, 23.08. On the road, 13.3. Multiple touchdowns in 7 of 8 home games. Multiple touchdowns in 1 of 7 road games. 20-plus points on DraftKings in 5 of 8 home games. 20-plus points on the road one time. And it was just last week. And an opposing QB facing Chicago has finished top 5 in DK 5 of the last 8 weeks. In that span, quarterbacks are averaging 24 points per game versus that defense. Again, Goff at 5,600, to me, should be in a majority of your lineups. It's such a safe play at a cheap price. I'd be shocked if he doesn't crack at least 20 points. Has a chance to score 3. He scored 29 last week versus Carolina, which is a pretty good D. I love both of those QBs. I love this game. Again, Sharks 4,300, St. Brown 7,800, which I don't think is ridiculous. There's just a lot of ways to go. And again, I'm not going to bat an eye at anybody that wants to play Swift or Williams in this game because they're both in that 54 to 5,000 range, which both of those guys have been over $6,000 for most of the year. I just think there's going to be a ton of points. So this is a game we talk about on the pod where sometimes you want to go heavy on a game. This is the one to me this week that if you're going to do that, this is definitely it.
Switching to the other side of the ball, no Deshaun Elliott for Detroit. Alex Anzalone is a LB3 flex if that's how deep you're rolling. On the flip side, for Chicago, we thought that what was his name?
Jack Sanborn?
No, Joe Thomas was going to have some relevance. He had a good week, his first week, filling in for Sanborn. But you look at the tackle numbers here. Nicholas Morrow has been playing pretty well in week 15. He had you 11 tackles in the TFL. Last week he had 8 tackles. This should be a heavy running attack here for the Chicago. Let me take that back. It should not be a heavy attack for the Detroit Lions. But I think if you had to pick a linebacker here, who we're talking about like the coverage linebacker versus the inside linebacker, I'm kind of liking the outside coverage guy a little bit. Or are you on the other side of the coin here?
No, I'm on the side of the coin in the fact that both of these linebackers are, at the or near really close to the 100% snap share. And in a game that I think is going to be as high scoring as we think it's going to be, that I think both those two, because there's nobody at the in the front four for Chicago that's going to do anything in the way of stopping any run or at least putting pressure on Goff. So I think the opportunity is going to be higher for sure for both Thomas and Morrow. Both have good tackle efficiency as a whole. Thomas, that didn't blow you away, but like I said, he's on the field the entire time. I'm good with both plays there. I like Jaquan Brisker in this matchup. And then, like you said, going back to the flip side to Detroit, without Deshaun Elliott, you hope you're not stretching this thin. But there's a chance that if you do, you have to look at someone like Melifonwu, who played 100% of snaps, saw 43 almost percent of snaps in the box, and was effective. I thought maybe CJ Moore might be that guy, but it's not. So Melifonwu could be an interesting play. I wrote about him on the waiver wire. And outside of that, Anzalone, like you touched on, not much else outside of that. The one person I'll say that I'm not sure if I want to get caught up in is James Houston. I love what he was doing, which was just, sack after sack after sack, very productive, but the playing time just wasn't there. Again, we saw 20% snaps last week. So I see his name mentioned enough in that the upside. I think he's more of a dynasty play than anything going forward, if that's even an option.
All right. Very good, very good. Okay, let's get this massacre out of the way pretty quickly. Denver, Kansas City. Let's go the opposite side. How we sometimes switch it up here. Let's do IDP first, and we'll get to offense. Look, against the Rams. Let's call out the obvious. This should be a fairly one-sided affair with Kansas City kind of like dominating the time possession. One would think.
You would think, right?
The same thing happened last week with the Denver Broncos against the Rams. Alex Singleton put up 20 tackles and a tackle for a loss. Josie Jewell, 10 tackles. Both are you're starting because you're anticipating the same type of volume there, just because he'll be on the field more. Randy Gregory suspended, or no, he's on IR actually.
Yeah.
So that's not even happening, and even then he was suspended also for a game, so it's not good either way.
Yeah, they took suspension away, and
they did. Okay, so
and they made it a $50,000 fine or something like that. But then he was banged up, so yeah, he's out of the equation. And that's the difficult part about this Detroit or Denver defense. Last week was a bang matchup against the Rams offensive line, and they got shut down. And I don't see the same thing happen. It's crazy. I want to say the same thing can happen for the Chiefs, because they clearly have a better offensive line than the Rams. But Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley both have been allowing decent pressure. So it makes me wonder if, just because the way Denver plays against the Chiefs, at least everybody does against the Chiefs, when you have a target on your back a little bit, is Baron Browning a good option? And I like the pressures. I don't know if I would start him as much, but I'm always going to start Singleton and Jewell. You can't get away from it, Jorge. It's crazy. Singleton, despite the fact that we all know it's like, well, he's not going to play 100% of snaps. He's going to play 75%. He might play 80%. He's playing 87 last week. But, man, his efficiency, 35% last week. And that's not like an astronomical number for him. It is, but it's not, He's consistent.
On the flip side for Kansas City, we had seen limited snaps. Leo Chanel have some production leading into last week, did not deliver last week. So it's been the Nick Bolton, Willie Gay show Bolton last week, 18 tackles. Willie Gay last week, 9 on TFL. Here's the thing. If the offense for the Chiefs is controlling the time of possession and you're reducing the amount of time these linebackers are there, do you think that hurts their upside this week, or do you think they can just be super efficient with their opportunities and still get you the close to 10 tackles or more upside?
I'll never sit Bolton. The Gay Chanel talk, that's where, I mean, it's hard to get away from Willie Gay if he's getting played, 60% of the time compared to Leo Chanel's 30. It's Bolton 1, Willie Gay 3, if you're ranked, or A, and then there's C, B minus plays, if probably C minus plays, honestly. The play that I want to watch, and I talked about this a little bit going into this week, it's very intriguing. Last week, and I've changed my tune a little bit. I'm glad I didn't go so gung-ho. So here's what I was originally thinking. Keith, I don't know if you probably heard much about this. So last week, L'Jarius Sneed lined up exclusively on the outside for the first time all year. He's been a slot corner. He's been nickel. He's been in and out. But he played 97% roughly, I think is what it was, on the outside as an actual wide corner against DK Metcalf. Because Tyler Lockett being out, the Chiefs knew that we're going to test him against we're going to test him against our shadow, and we're going to see what's going to happen. And he stayed out there. He still got good tackle because he was targeted enough that he made the tackles when targeted, which is a great stat for a cornerback in IDP. Problem is, I don't think he does it this week, or it's not a problem. It's a good thing for L'Jarius Sneed owners, because I was worried that he was going to do the same thing and just line up against, maybe Judy or Sutton. But the only reason they did DK is because they weren't going to move him into the slot, and they didn't want to keep moving Sneed in and out and in and out and in and out. They wanted to get him comfortable. So, Jorge, this is more to you. I do take back a little bit my concern with a L'Jarius Sneed. I had at one point dropped him down to my DB 21 on the week, and I have now subsequently moved that back into the top 12.
Nice. And of course, you can find his rankings over on Fantasy Pros and the Expert Consensus Ranking tab, as well as head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out our IDP rankings as well as offense rankings here. Okay, Keith, let's get you back in here. I know you are an offensive guru here when it comes to this stuff. Let's talk about these matchups here. For DFS purposes, given the pricing here for Denver, who's the bigger investment that you're willing to make, money in, Judy or, I guess it's really Judy, right?
Yeah.
For the Denver Broncos.
He's been really great since he's came back. He obviously had a monster game the first matchup versus KC, but to me, it's just the big thing is in the last 4 weeks, 31 targets, 25 receptions, 331 yards. He's done it with different quarterbacks, scored at least 10.5 points. And KC versus receivers on DK. And this is not really a knock on their defense. I keep telling people that when you're up and you have the offense that they do, you're going to give up points on DK to quarterbacks and receivers, but 6 receivers have finished top 5 for the week versus KC, 7 have finished top 7, and 6 receivers, including Judy in their first matchup, have scored 30-plus points. So I am a little concerned about his injury tag, and obviously the whole mess that is Russell Wilson, but I just think that they're going to be down. They're going to be throwing. And you look at the first game, Nate, they were down 21, right? And then Judy went nuts because they were just in a complete throw game script. And I could see that happening again this week easily. I actually, and I know Joe did not like it when I brought this up, but I don't hate Russell Wilson this week. Because again, QBs versus Kansas City, they get down, they throw a ton, and then they end up with like 15, 20 points. And he's like 5,300 this week. So, you can do a lot worse.
And the secondary for the Chiefs is it's young, and it's an exploitable situation. I was gonna say for a savvy veteran like Russell Wilson, but I don't think he's playing like a savvy or a veteran. Maybe a
savvy
retired
diva.
Maybe yeah, exactly. Or a veteran of World War II, maybe.
I would take the veteran over World War II over Russell Wilson the way he's been playing this week.
Yes,
so You mentioned Jerry Jeudy, of course. Keith, he's one of your medium plays, a wide receiver, 6,400 on DK. Folks, if you want some great DK, aka DraftKings play advice, head over on Twitter, the Daily Fix Pod at the Daily Fix Pod. They have all their plays listed there for bargain plays, for the medium plays, and then the expensive tier plays. Both he and Joe Matz have just all season long have done a tremendous job hoping to get you that dollar bills, excuse me. And then just great insight. Subscribe to their pod, the Daily Fix Pod. Just lights out content, gaining huge respect in the fantasy football DFS industry. A lot of big names. You all had Bob Harris on, one of the godfathers of fantasy football.
Really cool to have him on. Awesome to talk to him.
Just a lot of respect going your way. And let's not forget, folks, just because, here for most of us, the redraft is ending. We got dynasty stuff coming up, even bigger than that. DFS ain't going away. The Daily Fix Pod, Keith and Joe will be going straight through the Super Bowl. So we're going to have tons of content for you here still after this week for Fantasy and Frames. So definitely subscribe to the Daily Fix Pod. Go on Twitter, the Daily Fix Pod. Look at their plays for this week. Going to Kansas City. Look, I could see both McKinnon, obviously McKinnon, just because how involved he's been in the receiving game, but I could see Isaiah Pacheco having a good game this week. I could see obviously Kelsey, I see Mahomes. But as far as a wide receiver for this matchup, has Juju Smith-Schuster earned it this week for having a spot on your roster? Not your roster, but your starting lineup. Keith, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think yes. I know that last week was not a great week for him, but I mean, you look overall over the last 8 games. Now, I don't count those couple of games after he got injured because he didn't play a high snap count. He is the number 2 option in this offense behind Kelsey, and it's not even close. I mean, he's got so many games with 6-7 receptions, especially if you're in a PPR or half PPR league. Like, to me, he's almost a fringe wide receiver 1 at this point. And I like him. I know this isn't a great matchup, but he had a decent game the first time. And I think you can always trust Schuster. And I actually have him in a few lineups today in DFS just because I think he's going to be really low owned because the Denver's ranked versus receivers on DK. I think his price is too low for the kind of games we've seen him put up and basically his floor most weeks. I think definitely in your championship, I'd feel pretty confident having Schuster. I mean, as long as he's not, you're not sitting a true number 1 for him, but I definitely think he's a wide receiver 2 at the least.
Shooting over here to another 1 o'clock matchup. Got the Dolphins and the Patriots. No Tua Tagovailoa. Ironically here, whether it's Bridgewater or Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill still eats. So they still get the ball to him, which is fantastic.
Jorge, I went and looked it up. For all of Teddy's throws this year, Hill has a 37% target share. That's so it's ridiculous. Actually higher with Bridgewater than it is with Tua. So I have him in some DK lineups, and I expect Hill to be the one guy for Miami that actually has a decent game today. But I don't like the situation for Miami at all. New England's D's been playing great. And they're actually probably my favorite defense on DraftKings just because I think the Niners are going to be so high owned. You can get the Patriots for 2,600 versus a backup QB at home. They scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. And I think it's 7 games this year. It's outrageous.
Jalen Waddle, I'm playing. The question here for the running back situation, is it going to be the Raheem Mostert show or is it going to be the Jeff Wilson show here?
Flip a coin.
Yeah, right. Pretty much. I was Team Mostert and he got some attempts, but I've seen him play a lot more in special teams, especially returning the ball last week. Jeff Wilson did land into the end zone there, so I don't know. I'm kind of the special teams work. I don't know how much I'm liking that, so I'm kind of maybe leaning more Jeff Wilson if I had to lean one this week. On the flip side, Ramondre Stevenson questionable, put up kind of a dud last week. If you still were able to,
is Harris playing?
That's the thing. I don't know. I don't know if Harris is playing. We got to look that up. As we're talking here, as far as everybody else there, Jacoby Myers. I don't feel like you can do better than Jacoby Myers. So if anything, I'm kind of interested more on the defensive side of the ball in this matchup while we look up the Damian.
Looks like he's not on the injury report.
Okay, so then here's the question: Do you start Damian Harris in your RB spot, or do you start Stevenson, or can the case be made you have one running back, one flex in this matchup versus the Dolphins? Middle linebacker Jerome Baker has been, or linebacker rather, Jerome Baker has not been playing well. This defensive line is not exactly anything. Well, I take that back. Christian Wilkins, is pretty well. So this could be a tough running back matchup here this week. I take all that back.
Yeah, I would only want Ramondre. I don't think I would want to start Damon Harris. Twofold. Number one, I don't see the Patriots in the game nearly as much as the 2.5 point favorite that they are. I think Miami can win this game outright, first of all. And even with Teddy, there's maybe
Teddy covers for sure.
Teddy cover. Yeah. I mean, I think that the Dolphins are ahead. I think the Patriots are a little more banged up defensively than they have been going into many other matchups, especially against the Dolphins, even though I think I want to go back and see how many games have the Dolphins beaten the Patriots in a row? Is it or out of the last 4 or 5? Isn't it?
I know they own them in Miami. That's going back a long time too.
And I guess it is in Foxborough, so that changes things a little bit. But I wouldn't. And exactly like you're talking about, Jorge, that you talk about the defensive line, and you touched on Christian Wilkins, but Zach Seiler has been really good as well. Jerome Baker, it kills me to say this, has been much better as of late. Much better. Like to the point where I don't ever want to recommend him, but he's been good enough that I have a hard time looking past what he's done over the last month. I mean, in real football talk, sometimes more than even IDP.
Sure. Sticking with IDP here, I'm always going to be rolling with my guy Matt Judon. I think he's always a must play here. If you had to roll with either Dietrich Wise or John Uche here, who would you rather have?
Probably Uche.
Yeah.
Wise was really hot to start the season, kind of fizzled out just a little bit, or a lot bit actually. But I really like. I think they've built a good line. The problem with Wise versus Uche talk is they both are limited snaps, and it's like, man, Wise played 60% last week. Uche was around 50%. I can see them flip-flopping each week. Uche's the more productive and the more likely to have the big game. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm all on board the Kyle Duggar bandwagon here. Obviously, he's Adrian Phillips, I believe he's either out or he's injured or questionable. So not any concern as far as snaps being taken away here. Let's go to the next matchup here. Indy, the Giants. I briefly touched on Julian Blackmon. I like his tackle and IDP upside as well as his coverage upside there going against Richie James. I like Richie James in this matchup because of that. Obviously you're playing Saquon. Daniel Jones, I think, is a good question here. I think, you saw the Colts kind of shut down Justin Herbert last week, which is kind of concerning. I do like Kwity Paye's matchup here against Evan Neal, who's been a offensive liability. So Kwity Paye, even though he's been playing reduced snaps, and I forget the name of the player who's been coming in and helping, or not helping, but hurting his snap percentage. But even then, Paye has been more productive, and has a great matchup. On the flip side, man, it's hard for me to recommend anybody, to be honest with you. Even Michael Pittman, you saw what happened last week. It's tough. Keith, what are your thoughts on Michael Pittman? Would you recommend him as a start this week for any format, really?
I mean, for any format, probably, yeah. Just because, I mean, if you have Pittman and you've got to the championship,
right.
If you're starting like 3 receivers, I don't know, how you can justify benching him. He's still getting a large target share. For DFS, though, to your point, for the Colts, Jelani Woods is basically the only guy that I have this week that I like. He's 2,800. Giants are really bad. Versus, and I should take that back because Jackson is playing, right?
I'm sorry, say that.
Deion Jackson, the running back.
So honestly, he I don't know if you saw the report last week, but heading into the Monday Night Football matchup, he got into a shouting match with his running backs coach and went off on the coach. And then 2 days later, you see Zach Moss get a majority of the carries. You didn't see Deion Jackson except for one or 2 pass plays on Monday Night Football, which he dropped. I don't know if they've made up, right? Between now and then, I would find that pretty hard to believe.
The only reason I ask is Giants linebackers are horrible. They've had trouble all year with running backs in the passing game. And I mean, that's not something really I don't think Zach Moss can do. So, I mean, if you're looking for like a flyer on DFS, I'm not going to, look at you too bad if you want to throw that into a lineup. But I would try to stay away from the Colts. I love Barkley this week, though. I think the Giants are just going to try to pound it. But to your point about Jones, depending on who your other QB was, I would be confident starting him. I mean, you look at what he scored consistently the last 5-6 weeks, and with his rushing ability, which the ball is as good of a play. I mean, they're as good of a coach team as, to me, any team in the NFL. I am confident Jones. I don't know what receiver he's going to throw it to, but I am confident Jones is going to do enough probably to get you, 15 points or more. He seems to do it every single week.
Yeah. I will say that in part your assessment, their coaching tree that they have now is as good as any team in football. I mean, offense and defensive side. Jorge, speaking of defense,
yes,
who returns to this matchup this week?
Your guy and a lot of our preseason favorites, Xavier McKinney. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's about damn time.
Even with that being the case, if I had to pick a defensive back, I'm still rolling Julian Love this week. I thought Jason Pinnock was going to have a week last week. That did not turn out to be the case, but Julian Love, obviously. I like if you had to pick one, Ojulari or Thibodeau, would you roll Ojulari just because of how good he's been playing, or would you roll Thibodeau, or is it good deal, matchup deal 3 or higher this week?
Man, Ojulari has played phenomenally. He really has. The stats haven't always tracked the production, or the production hasn't always tracked the metrics, if you want to put it that way, if you want to dig a little deeper, which isn't always the fun thing because eventually you're just let down. And it's like, but Ojulari has a 25% win rate. He should be beating more times and getting more sacks than Thibodeau, who only has a 12%. It's just not the way the world works. It is what it is. Right. I personally would rather start Ojulari. I feel like I'm going with the metrics, and he has proven to me that he's just more, I want to say more consistent, but I don't know if that's probably the fair thing. I think he has shown that he is consistently doing what he needs to do to get past his defenders or his blockers and create pressure. And that's what I want to see. And I think that's what will, the one concerning thing from last week was the fact that he did, I think, how much time did he miss of the game? I know he only played 30% of the snaps.
Right. So,
what was it? Go right ahead.
No, so for those who are unaware, he had an ankle injury, was limited in practice all week, although he should be good to go according to reports there this week. But whether that's on a limited snap count or not, I don't know. He himself said he feels fine, and the coaches have liked what they've seen, so obviously they wouldn't put him back in if not. And this is a big game. This is one of those things, they win and they're in. So I wonder how much, the time off has helped him to the point where he gets a usual snap percentage. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Got New Orleans, Philadelphia. Marshawn Lattimore is actually returning for this game. And if he lines up against A.J. Brown, I'm a little concerned, to be honest with you. Lattimore has played really well against A.J. Brown in recent years, held him, I think, to under 60 yards or so. Last year when A.J. Brown was with the Titans. No Jalen Hurts. Gardner Minshew's in this week. I love Devonta Smith. This guy has just been phenomenal this year. I like Minshew also for the Saints. I keep clicking on Alvin Kamara's name as I'm trying to adjust my rankings to finalize them.
Don't do it.
I keep moving him down.
Okay.
Down and down and down. Currently he's my 24, and I'm still we're talking, I'm like, nope, down. Just, and then of course watch him go off for like 5 touchdowns, which is not going to
No,
happen.
he won't do that because he'll give it to Taysom Hill, even if he does get it into the red zone.
Exactly. So outside of Olave, even then, it's just a bad matchup all the way around with this Philadelphia defense.
Mm-hmm.
The one good thing I will say about New Orleans, though, is I do like, for IDP purposes, Carl Granderson this week going against the Lane Johnson-less offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Jordan, for those who are, name heavy when it comes to like, oh, I've heard of Cameron Jordan's name. He's not going to have a great matchup with Jordan Mailata this week. So Carl Granderson I like here. I do not know the status update of Pete Warner, whether or not he's playing or not. If he's not, Caden Ellis, I think, is a good play. He's been a good play since he's coming for relief of Warner. On the flip side, we keep talking about this, Nate. It's a rotation, flip a coin for the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. Therefore, I'm not kind of rolling with it until there's more. Although I will say this, Josh Sweat the past few weeks has been playing a lot more consistently out of anybody along the defensive line here for Philadelphia. So if I had to pick an Eagles lineman, I would roll with Josh Sweat, TJ Edwards at linebacker. But aside from that, that's all I can really. Demario Davis, sorry, I forgot him. How could I forget Mr. #Tackle Machine for the Saints? Aside from that,
the question then is who's the number 2 linebacker for New Orleans? Is outside of Demario Davis, are you fine with Caden Ellis? I mean, because Pete Warner's on the IR, I'm fine with Caden Ellis.
I didn't know he was on the IR. I thought he was still questionable. Okay, no, he's on the IR.
Yeah, Pete Warner landed on the IR. So I mean, I'm good with Caden Ellis. Just I'm going to put it this way: I think I'd rather have Caden Ellis over Demario Davis almost.
Why is that?
I just feel like his efficiency has been better as a whole, and I don't know. I watch him play, and Ellis, man, that's a really elongated way to say that. Sorry, my brain to mouth ratio is still a little wonky. I just see Ellis make more splash plays, and I feel like that upside is a little bit higher. I think the floor is probably consistent with both, but I'm shooting for. Let's be honest. If you have both, you probably start Davis because it's safer, and I don't blame anybody for doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. But I think to your point, the fact that Minshew is playing, I think if Hurts was playing, you'd have more Demario Davis just roaming the field, going after him versus Caden Ellis, who's shown that he does rush the passer occasionally, and you have a stationary. Although Minshew runs too, but I don't, obviously not to the degree that Jalen Hurts does.
No kidding.
That's my Booger McFarland.
What an amazing!
I know. This is what you missed all last week, but just nonstop Booger McFarland takes.
Oh no! I
you were listening.
As much as I could. I'm kidding. I wasn't listening.
Very funny. You got the next 1 o'clock matchup. We got the Panthers and the Bucks. Let's get to Tampa Bay out here. Outside of Chris Godwin, who do we feel 100%? And I say that specifically, 100% confident in starting here for Tampa Bay.
Crickets.
Yep. I trust the cricket 100% more than I do. Yep. Mike Evans has been non-existent. Tom Brady is coming off of one of his worst games of his career. Fournette, I will say, in a great matchup last week against the Cardinals on 1.5 feet, put up great performance. I don't see that happening again this week versus Carolina, though. So outside of Godwin on offense, that's kind of who I'm feeling comfortable with. On defense for the Buccaneers, we like the name Devin White, and I was talking about this with F Queen Roxanne on Are You Down with IDP on Friday night / Saturday morning. The old adage, start your studs, I think needs to be kind of clarified a little, I guess, from my perspective. Start your studs does not mean start necessarily your big names. Okay. It means start the players who have been productive for you, that have gotten to you to the point where you're at right now. And if I'm looking in recent weeks, while Devin White is a big name and has a history of being stud-like, honestly, against this matchup with Carolina, who's going to be probably running the ball more, I like Levante David better. He's been the far more consistent run stopper, higher run stopping percentage. The tackle numbers have been there. The fantasy point production has been there. You're hoping Devin White is, Devin White, where he's like doing everything on the field, which is certainly not outside the range of outcomes here. But if I'm looking for the floor play here for linebacker, I'm liking Levante David better, to be honest with you. I know that's a maybe controversial take, but again, it goes back to the whole name versus productivity, the person who's gotten you to the point there. What are your thoughts on that, Nate?
Well, I mean, you said it is, and I even great you say that, because in my article for I think it was week 14 or 15, I break down that exact same philosophy. Is that don't start your studs, or don't get cute and sit your studs. If your studs are players that have been productive for 9 weeks and then they have a down week, don't just assume they're done. It's the big name that hasn't been performing is a little concerning. Over the last 3 weeks, Levante David versus Devin White has been a lot more, well, it's been Levante David heavily, but it's to the point where it's, David has more solo to assist, or better solo to assist ratio. He has more total tackles. He has more, Devin White has no tackles for loss, no sacks. He does have 5 quarterback hits, which in some scoring is huge. And that's probably an identifier that maybe there's more to come, something maybe beneath the sheets a little bit.
Right.
But outside of that, Devin White has been your typical 7 tackle a week guy and nothing else, which is just, honestly, it's not what you want. It's a safe floor if he's your LB3, but he's not. He's your 1. And so David, on the other hand, though, has been the guy to go to it. And I'm not going to say I disagree with you.
On the flip side here, I believe Mike Edwards is back here, which that's strong. I definitely would like to see inserted into lineups here, just because it should be a heavy run affair here for Carolina. On the flip side, you're starting Brian Burns, you're starting Frankie Louvu, you're starting Jeremy Chin. On offense, we talked about this earlier, Deonta Foreman versus Chuba Hubbard. Keith, you mentioned on the PPR upside, you'd like the idea of Hubbard. For the other offensive positions, though, DJ Moore this week, you like this week against, Carlton Davis, I believe, is questionable. I don't know if he's going to be coming back from injury, I believe it was. Although I think he was trending in that direction. That being the case, DJ Moore is getting the target share with Sam Darnold back at quarterback. Is there anybody else here, Keith, that you're liking for Carolina?
To be honest, no. For DFS, I'm trying to stay away from this game other than DJ Moore.
Okay. Let's go to the next game here then. I'm super excited. There is a scenario where I believe the Giants, the Seahawks, and the Lions lose today. Washington clinches a playoff spot. I do not see that happening this week. I do see them winning this week. This is one of the lower – no, it's not the lowest, but it's one of the lower over-unders here with 40.5. Washington, the Cleveland Browns in Washington. Look, no Antonio Gibson. The Browns suck in the running game. Give me all the Brian Robinson you can get there. I love his upside here. Carson Wentz in at quarterback. Kind of concerns me for the McLaurin, consistency that we've seen with Taylor Heineke the past few weeks. But he should definitely get his opportunities. But I think, Keith, you could, Jahan Dotson has been somebody that you've been high on. DFS purposes, you're high on him this week. If God forbid if you had both of these wide receivers on your roster, would you feel comfortable starting both?
I guess I don't feel comfortable starting McLaurin. There's enough of a history with Wentz that he throws the ball to Curtis Samuel more than he throws to McLaurin. So I would be really nervous about that, especially when Cleveland, I'm assuming, is going to play man and bracket him. That's part of the reason why I'm so big on Dotson at his price at 4,600. And we talked about this on the Daily Fix. He's got 7 touchdowns on 50 targets. That is freaking insane. And he's got, I think it's 5 games with 17 points or more. In the 6 games that he's played 80% or more of the snaps.
Yep.
He's played 80% or more of the snaps the last 3 games. I expect him to do that today. And Cleveland does have a problem with these receivers that are downfield threats. Jamar Chase, 10 for 119, a touchdown. Mike Williams, 10 for 134. Corey Davis, 2 for 83 and a touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 8 for 102, 2 touchdowns. Robbie freaking Anderson had 5 for 102 and a touchdown. And I think Wentz really raises Dotson's ceiling, because that's what, Dotson is this big play touchdown guy. And I expect Cleveland to try to slow down McLaurin. I'm completely with you on Robinson, though, too. He is way underpriced on DK. I think he's like 5,200 this week. Without Gibson, I mean, he's going to get – they've even reports out he's going to have a higher than normal workload, and he gets, as many carries as any back in the league already.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. Everybody talks about Christian Watson just because of the hype with Aaron Rodgers and all that. Dotson's got a touchdown in every single game he's played. Even with the lower snap percentage, he's played. Like, just the guy's been phenomenal. For Cleveland, Nate, Nick Chubb, I wonder how much we're capping his upside here, just because Washington's front seven has been playing lights out. You have the return of Chase Young right here. Kareem Hunt is somebody that we've talked about for weeks as just completely unreliable.
Yeah.
And then I got a question on TikTok on our Fantasy and Frames account, which, by the way, for those of you who have been subscribing, you've been helping that channel grow a lot. So thank you very much for that. And the person asked me, who do you feel more comfortable with, Nick Chubb or Amari Cooper? I said I feel more comfortable with Amari Cooper, just because we've been seeing the kind of the chemistry kind of develop between him and Watson the past few weeks. Chubb's upside, he only had 90 yards last week, 99 yards or something like that. How should people really be feeling about Nick Chubb this week, if you had to give people a comfort level?
I always have a hard time going against Nick Chubb, because I do truly believe that I think he's probably the best running back in football, as far as like just the running back. Not maybe as the most versatile and all around back, but between the tackles and just that old, the Jim Brown-esque running back, that's Nick Chubb to me. And any given week, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him break out and have a big week. But you're right, Washington is just so difficult. If I'm gonna try to exploit an area, it's definitely going to be passing. And we just saw this past week, there was a lot of talk, a lot of bullshit about Cleveland and how they need to pass the ball more to be an elite team. And I know that stems from more kind of just like some narratives that were built up. If you guys saw what I'm talking about, or if I'm it gets put out there, and it makes you think that if there's where there's smoke, there's fire, and does this mean they're going to lead to Amari Cooper? But last week was a good indicator. We saw him play. Saw him play. God, Nate, you're stupid. But we saw him see 35% of the targets. We saw a good ADOT. Hell, he had 50% of the total air yards. So he was controlling that entire game. Didn't lead to a huge week, but it feels like it's trending in the right direction. As his total ranking overall in PPR scoring has went from, he was 61st to 44th to 31st. Is this the week that he enters into the top 20? And I think that there's a good case to be made for that, at least with the return of Deshaun Watson.
Got a question here from Gary Cooper on YouTube. Giants DST or Chargers DST? So here's the thing. I would normally roll with the Chargers. Last week I mentioned in our IDP Chasing Upside article, if you needed an upside play, put Kyle Van Noy, who veteran. 31 years old, reduced snaps. But you've been seeing his over the course of the season. The past few weeks, however, you've been seeing his upside kind of come back into play, having a sack in the past 3 games. But even then, I really wanted to recommend him again this week. But these tackles for the Rams, believe it or not, the past 3 weeks, they've been not horrible. They've been playing really well. We've seen the offensive line play well. The Rams, the running game has been getting back to normal. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick the Giants, just because it's Indianapolis. So what do you expect from Indianapolis? So I think we can all agree here: Giants DST in this matchup. On the defensive side of the ball, let's go back to Washington. Jonathan Allen, if you're having a defensive tackle league roster spot for your IDP leagues, I think he's been as consistent as they can be all season long. Jamin Davis, I feel like I'm putting him every single week in an IDP start article just because how can you not? He's just been playing lights out. The run, it's going to be a run heavy attack, I think, for Cleveland. Even though I don't know how efficient it's going to be, just because you have somebody like a Jonathan Allen at DT or Deron Payne or Cole Holcomb. Cameron Curl is still questionable, I think, heading into this matchup. If he does not play, that raises the floor even more so, I think, for Jamin Davis. Mike Wohlert on Shoot the Gap this past week was talking about Jamin Davis and how he's liking his tackle rate. So I don't know if I have to say Jamin Davis's name too much more, but I'll say it again, Jamin Davis. If Curl is back, I'm a little concerned about the ankle history. He didn't play last week. We saw the combo of Jeremy Reeves and insert other player's name, but coincidentally, this insert other player's name was questionable and is doubtful for this matchup. So Jeremy Reeves should be helping out in run support if that's the case. But definitely Davis, Jonathan Allen. I know you notice how I didn't mention Chase Young or Montez Sweat here. I just think the tackles are a little bit better. Not really a great matchup for either for IDP purposes, or could I be wrong there, Nate?
No, I think that you're probably right. I mean, between Wills and Conklin, that's a tough matchup. I think that Montez Sweat has proven enough this week. And if anything, maybe this is that week that he really gets going even more so, in that he's pissed off from getting the Pro Bowl snub, which was ridiculous that he didn't get picked in. But I get how Pro Bowl voting works. It doesn't make any difference. It's stupid. Right. But he deserves to get in. Chase actually had what at times appeared to be a decent season premiere, if that's the right way to say that.
We'll go with that.
He, and a lot of that's his just his personality. He's big and flamboyant when things happen, and they were going to center the camera around him. And so every time there was any play whatsoever that he was even remotely close to, it was zooming in and it was, hyperbolic. Oh, look, Chase Young. I mean, he didn't have, but I don't think he even registered a single pressure in the game.
He got a padded pass deflection, I think.
I did see that. Yes, he did get one pass. I actually remember that. I remember seeing that. They actually he got his hand up, and then they talked about 4 minutes about him and how. And I'm thinking, which is the right thing. He is. Remember, he still is a top pick. We shouldn't completely throw him to the wasteland, but let's not maybe anoint him as this fantasy championship stalwart. Do not start Chase Young. If you have Chase Young in your lineup, shit went awry, man. Sorry. you're in a Washington Commanders only league. If that's the case,
still bench him.
Pivot to you can probably work on John Ridgeway or
that's
deep
low.
Deron Payne. There you go. Better.
There you go. All right, Jacksonville, Houston, another 1:00 matchup. The last of the 1:00 matchups. Keith, you were talking earlier about Trevor Lawrence's struggles against Jacksonville outside of one game where he had 3 touchdown passes, but that's it. This should be the Travis Etienne show, just because of how poorly Houston has been playing against the run, which is great for IDP purposes if you have Christian Kirksey into your lineup, or even Christian Harris. Part of the success Houston has had in recent weeks has been against wide receivers, and so you look at the coverage plays here of for Houston. Jalen Petrie should have definitely I think a good week this week. For Jacksonville, I think it's a little bit different. Obviously you're playing for IDP Aluakon, excuse me. I don't know the status of Chad Muma's snap percentage last week. So I'll have to hold off on that one for a second.
32%.
Yeah, so now there's just one linebacker for Jacksonville I feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then for Houston, for offense, Brandon Cooks. I'm sorry, I can't tell you to start any Texans this week.
Oh, now come on.
Okay.
About Chris Moore.
There you go.
Okay. All right.
I like him a lot on DK. He was Joe's bargain tier
for redraft, I guess I'd say. Not so much for DFS, but go ahead. Why for DFS?
Well, I mean, just he's been seeing a huge target share. The Jaguars in the slot are one of the worst defenses in the league, which is where Moore is going to line up predominantly. And I mean, to be honest, the Texans have been frisky. I do think this game is going to be close. I will say that we were talking about how much they're going to play. What are they playing for? Schefter put out a report I just saw that the Jags are playing to win. They're not going to rest any starters, and it's full systems go. I still think that if they really want to win this game, they're going to try to run it first, and maybe not try to throw it as much as they have in recent games. We'll see about that, though.
I got a question here on YouTube from Cheeto. He says, "Morning, Jets. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. PPR need 4: Curtis Samuel, Brandon Cooks, Michael Pittman, Jacoby Myers, and/or Cortland Sutton." So
Sit one.
Right.
I
I'd sit my.
know. Go ahead. Let's see.
I would sit Myers.
Yep. I think I would probably do the same. Let's see where I have. Man, I have like 4 of them all separated by like one spot. I've got Sutton at like 37. I've got Myers at 35. Cooks is the one that I'm teetering back and forth because I love what I saw out of Chris Moore originally for the without Brandon Cooks and without Nico Collins, and then Brandon Cooks' first week back, he looks great. I mean, utilization wise, he's back into the fold, even despite only running 76% of the route. So he had 27% target share. Man, I don't think I could sit Cooks as much against the Jags as much as I don't love it, Jorge. I'm going to sit Jacoby Myers as well.
What about you, Keith?
Yeah, I think that's the right call. The other guy I would consider there would be Pittman. As crazy as it sounds, and what I said earlier, I did not like what I saw out of Foles last week.
Yeah.
And I mean, old quarterback versus a team that's going to be blitzing like crazy. I mean, as much as I hate to say this, at least Myers has Mac Jones, which is better than Nick Foles. With it being PPR, but I would probably lean sit Myers as well.
Okay. Let's continue on here with the. Well, I guess there's not really anybody else to talk about here for this Jacksonville-Houston matchup. So let's go to this next one, which.
Whoa! We need to talk about Evan Ingram. Come on now.
Sorry. I totally blanked out. Thank you.
For DFS, he's 4,400, and this happens every week. We talk about this. I don't understand where they get this price. Ingram over his last 4 games, 40 targets. That is 43% of his total on the season. 31 receptions. That's 45% of his total on the season. 367 yards. That's 50% of his receiving yards on the season. Scored 3 touchdowns. That's 75% of his touchdowns. He scored at least 14 points in his last 4 games. He's averaging 22.9 points per game. Houston is 20th in points allowed to tight ends. And even in the first matchup, before he had any of these monster games, he had 10 targets, caught 6 passes, 12.9 points. I expect Evan Ingram. I mean, the big thing is they're 3-1 in these 4 games. So it's working with him basically being 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call it, in their passing game and a good matchup. And again, for DK, I do not understand why he's 4,400. That's insane. He's in a ton of my lineups today.
Yeah. And on the flip side, we didn't there's one player on defense on IDP for Houston that if I'm starting a defensive line and it's deep and you're scouring the waiver wire, or maybe you've had him for the last couple weeks, but Agbani Okunrakwo, again, I want to say that I said it right, but who knows? OGOK has been phenomenal. And last week we saw
he's been more than okay.
He's been more than okay. He's been wonderful. I mean, he's had 4 sacks in the last 4 games. Last week just alone, and like the one time when I go all in to say, hey, I think he has another good matchup, and there's a little little concerned because you put your foot in your mouth a lot. At least I do. That's 80%
Who
of my
doesn't,
diet.
Nate?
Right.
Come on.
Exactly.
When you're on tape all the time, too.
Leather and sole makes up the majority of my menu from foot in my mouth. But 55% snap share, a 90% PFF pass rush grade, 47% win rate, 36% pressure rate, unsustainable. Don't care. But I don't dislike this matchup against this Jags offensive line. I don't think that they're terrible, but if he's going against who, and this has been a great story for Walker Little. Walker Little came in for Cam Robinson, has played really good at left tackle, but he's still raw. He's young. He's just, he's not that great, unfortunately, yet. Hopefully he gets better and the Jags can continue to improve. But I love that matchup for him. I think that we start to see his name again, and that could be something to pay attention to.
And again, maybe this is, Lawrence's Miami to Brady, where he just can't play well against the Texans. Because, I mean, it really is. You look at his 3 games versus Texans versus almost every other team that he's played, it's crazy. He has not looked good against them.
Michelle, look what the Texans have done. Like you said, whoa, look at the Texans. Cowboys, they should have beat.
They hung with the Eagles before that, Nate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. That's right. I forget to even go back that far because it was the Detroit one that just shocked me so much. Like, we thought the Eagles one was nothing, and then it's like, oh shit. And then here, if they had beat the Chiefs, I would have been really, really shocked. But I had this, I say argument. It was a conversation with my 11-year-old nephew who's not a Chiefs fan, and he just wants to talk shit to me the entire time, and he knows how to do it really well. He's like, you almost lost to the worst team in the league. And I said, whoa, hold on. I don't disagree they're the worst team. But let's say that you, and I said Aiden is his name. I was like, let's put this in a situation. Let's say that you were playing or someone is playing 3 of the best people or teams in all of football, and this supposed worst team in football almost beats all 3 of them. If you're the worst team, do you still think it's fair to get shit on? I might not have used those exact terms, might have used a little different, probably use the exact terms.
I say you need to welcome to the real world, okay? If you're gonna talk shit, be prepared to get shit talked.
Exactly. And he's he's a Patriots fan living in Illinois, which makes no sense. Does we get those but I love him and it doesn't matter. And we talked trash back and forth, and then I pulled up and I said, but we didn't lose. We almost lost to the Texans. Your Patriots did lose to the Bears. So, that's he doesn't like arguing with me as much anymore. But
well, now since you put him in his place and everything, now he knows better too.
Yeah, I give him about another. He's gaining. He knows more than. He's very, very intelligent. I'll give him that. He knows a lot about way more football talk than I ever expected him to know.
Well,
we should have had him on the show this morning.
Let's calm down. No way. I don't want him talking shit to me.
Future fantasy and framer, maybe. We'll see.
We'll figure that out.
All right, the first of the 4:00 slate, San Francisco, Las Vegas.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think how far down your rankings do you have Devontae Adams this week, Nate?
I have not moved him outside of the top 12 yet, but I'm debating, and it's getting really difficult not to do so. I just don't know how I keep him inside the top 20 at this point.
I looked it up. Stidham has 3 games since 2020. He's thrown at least 10 passes, 34 pass attempts, 164 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 picks, and was not playing this 49ers team.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you can't run on him. I mean, that's the thing is it's not like you can have a monster, Jacobs game where he moves the ball for him. I think it's going to get really ugly.
I have Christian Watson 13 and Devontae Adams 14. Isn't that funny? How a year can go and like the primary Green Bay receiver replaces the old primary Green Bay receiver.
I just feel bad for people that had Jacobs and Adams because it's circumstances, right? Like those were 2 of the best picks in fantasy drafts this year. Guys who people were doubting. Number 1 running back. I think Adams the number 3 receiver or whatever. Right. And you basically, you don't even want to play them in your championship if you're in it because you're like, what the hell? It's just fantasy football is nuts. I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell right there.
Yeah,
exactly. For Vegas, I mean, you mentioned just you look at just how good San Francisco has been against opposing players for fantasy purposes as well as real football. It's not looking too good. Um, for San Francisco, obviously you're starting McCaffrey, you're starting Kittle, Ayuk. Are you starting Purdy in this matchup? For DFS purposes, I know Joe has him as a bargain play at 5,500. How are you feeling about Brock Purdy there, Keith?
I understand Joe's point, and I do have one lineup with him just because it's a great matchup. He's been really great. Like, I don't think you can underestimate how good he has been as a 7th round or last pick in the draft rookie. But my concern is, like, how much is he going to get to throw? I know they threw a lot in the Tampa game that they blew out, but in this situation, are they really going to be flinging? And I just look at Jared Goff as $100 more in a game versus a Bears D that I think is even worse than the Raiders, and I think it's going to be more competitive. I just lean going to Goff every time over that. But I totally understand why you would. And again, we talk about in these big fields where you can have multiple entries, you want to go contrarian, a lot of times, because that's going to mean lower ownership and less likely that other people have your lineup. And if those guys go up, you're going to finish higher. So, I mean, I don't, it's not a terrible play. I totally get it. I'm all in on Goff today.
Nate, let me ask you a question, which may not be as one-sided as one would think. Mm-hmm. If you were in a PPR league or a half PPR league and you had to start at wide receiver as a flex, which, again, like maybe like your second flex, Hunter Renfrow, or at tight end, Darren Waller, who would you want to have in your starting roster this week?
Man.
And I say it's tricky just because we know the wasteland tight end is, right? So how do you fade that? Well, I think the PPR nature of Renfrow in the slot is something I don't think should be taken away from either.
I don't either, but I think that Renfro's biggest attribute has been his connection with Carr, in that Carr understands how Renfrow runs. I mean, it's not that Renfrow just ran I can't remember the name of the route that he ran that gained so much accolade. It wasn't just the route. It was a lot to do with the route and his execution, but it was Carr's trust in him running that route. I don't know if Stidham has that same trust with him. And this is just me, if I'm a quarterback coming in, looking to move the chains and looking not to get killed and trying to move the ball, I'm going to go for the guy that's 6'4", or whatever size Darren Waller is. I'm making that number up as hyperbole, versus the 5'10" Hunter Renfrow. I would lean Waller. I think that PPR, that was Darren Waller's bread and butter for the entire last, the bulk of last season. Is he was the PPR stalwart as far as that comes. And so I think that there's a chance that I guess 2 years ago, sorry, I should clarify. I think that's what I would lean. What about you? Are you really torn between the two, or is this a decision for yourself to make?
I'm just thinking, okay, quarterback doesn't have a lot of success. We're already fading Devontae Adams. Needs to throw to somebody. Short intermediate passes are probably going to be his bread and butter if he's going to be doing that. So who's the one you go after? I'm with you. I think the Renfrow connection with Carr was the cause of his success. You mentioned 2 years ago with Waller. Last year, it was Renfrow who was catching more of the passes. I think Waller was either injured or just a connection between him and Renfrow and Carr.
He was out for that huge run by Renfrow.
Yeah. There you go. So I'm with you right there. Plus, like we were just saying, the wasteland that is tight end. He came out and played well last week, so I'm rolling with, if I have to, Darren Waller. All right, let's go to another 405 matchup. We got the Jets, we got the Seahawks. Keith, you and I on Fourth and Frames on Friday. We're all aboard the Mike White train. We like what he has to offer this week. We've seen him just play phenomenally. The passing volume is there, and the fantasy production is matching the passing volume there. We like his upside versus Seattle, which is friendly towards quarterbacks. We like not Elijah Moore. We like Garrett Wilson this week. You mentioned you like Tyler Conklin as a deeper play. Can you go back and explain a little bit more about Tyler Conklin?
Yeah, it's just, Seattle is dreadful versus tight ends. They give up over 15 yards of reception. And we talk about the wasteland, right, of tight ends. They're averaging over 15 yards of reception versus his defense. Conklin has 8 games with 7 points or more, which again, for the tight end position, you can do worse. Double figures in 4, 7 games with 4 more receptions, 9 games with 3 or more. And he had that monster game versus New England, who I think is fourth and touchdowns per game allowed to tight ends. It's like 0.85. Seattle's right behind them at like 0.80. So I'm just thinking there's a chance he could end up having the same type game. And I love Garrett Wilson at 5,500. I think that just Mike White understands he is by far the best Jets receiver. Joe made a wonderful case of that for whatever reason, no other QB, including Flacco, has figured that out, that we need to throw it to Wilson as much as possible. But say Seattle does shut him down, I think Conklin's one of the easiest like pivots I'm going to see them do, because again, Seattle's just dreadful. And I mean, even if you want to try Uzma and DFS, I don't hate that either, because again, Seattle sucks versus tight ends.
So, Jorge, I have a question for you,
sure.
Or for us. I have an IDP question on Twitter.
Okay.
John DeSantis wants to know. He has at defensive back a choice to make between Justin Simmons against my Chiefs or Rayshon Jenkins against the Houston Texans. That is a very difficult decision for me.
So I have to go Rayshon just because I want to see. Hold on, let me check something real quick, because I don't want to give misinformation.
No. For instance, what are you checking now? Because I think this is good.
So I'm looking at coverage. Okay.
Yep.
And so obviously with free safety, Justin Simmons is the free safety there, and going against which should be a pass-friendly Chiefs offense.
Right.
I'm looking then at the Texans. I'm looking at how conservative they've been on offense. Do they actually emphasize the running game with Burkhead and Royce Freeman? Wow, talk about a name I never thought I'd mention ever again.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so I honestly, I don't recall if Jenkins is the free or if he is the strong, which is what I was about to look up right now.
Strong.
So remember the conversation we were having about earlier about names and people who brought you there? I think this is a situation. Man, I can't. I trust Patrick Mahomes too much to take care of the ball than I do Davis Mills, and I feel like I'm going to go Rayshon Jenkins to answer your question.
Well, if it makes it even more challenging, over the last 4 games, Justin Simmons is the defensive back 3. Rayshon Jenkins is the defensive back 4. So,
flip a coin.
I hate to say that in any case, but part of that is Justin Simmons's 2 interception game in week 15. Outside of that, like week 13, 2 interceptions, 5 tackles, 2 pass deflections. Week 15, 4 tackles, 2 pass deflections, 2 interceptions. Weeks 14 and 16, he had big tackle upside, 9 tackles and then 6 tackles, but nothing else. Justin Simmons can be an enigma. He's elite gameplay, ball hawk. I don't see that. I don't see the interceptions against Mahomes.
Right.
Even though Mahomes has been known to throw interceptions, he's become a lot more short. He's taken what's given to him.
Sure.
Whereas Rayshon Jenkins, like you said, he also the owner of two interceptions in week 15. That was with an 18 tackle game. He was the number 1. I'm going to lean Rayshon with you. So I'm going to go ahead and answer him. Say Rayshon Jenkins. And that'll be that. So
there we go.
You may continue.
For IDP purposes, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Oh, well, for a severe upside play, I play Luke Masterson." I'm like, severe upside play? No, I say that, and I wrote about him in the IDP Chasing Upside article. But look, he's the de facto, 100% snap guy at linebacker, and he's going to go against a run-heavy San Francisco 49ers team. To Keith's point, how much is San Francisco and Brock Purdy going to be actually throwing the ball? This should be a heavy Christian McCaffrey game. So I like Masterson here. Max Crosby is always play. So there's that. He should get Mike McGlinchey, who's been atrocious at pass blocking, great at run blocking, but pass blocking not so much. On the flip side, for San Francisco, you have Bosa, you have you're starting, you have Warner, you have Greenlaw, even Hufanga, I think, has earned his way back a little bit into the good graces of the defensive back gods here, and helping to stop the run. So I don't know. That's who I got. Anybody else that's off the you guys are thinking about for this matchup? Nope. Crickets. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. Let's do the. Or actually, no. I'm sorry. I went back a couple of games. Let's go back to this Jets Seahawks game.
Got a
Barton-
question down there too, Jorge.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. All right, let's answer the question first. Ryan Weiss, friend of the show. What's going on? Find his work over at Club Fantasy and Football Guys. Morning,
Everywhere.
friends. Basically everywhere. Time to win some championships. Absolutely. Here are my struggles. One, New York Giants, DST, or Jacksonville, Washington, DSC, or Chargers. Excuse me. Thank you. Garrett Wilson, Tyler Lockett. Okay, let me go in reverse order. Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
1000%.
Um,
Mike White saw 6 red zone targets. First 2 starts. I don't count the Buffalo one because he got beat up. Scored 20 or more points in both those games. He's going to get peppered with targets. Saw 30 targets in 3 games with White as QB.
Number 2, Washington. I would go here versus the Chargers.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then number 1, I'd go New York.
Was it a 2 defense?
3 different leagues, 3 different questions.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. Golly, it must be nice to be in 3 championships. Show off, why don't you, Ryan?
But is he in the 4-Ed championship matchup for his division? I don't recall. Although I talk crap, but
he's got a belt behind him.
He's got a belt behind him every single week for winning the first 4-Ed championship tournament. So can't really say shit to the guy.
Mine will be right there. Come on.
We have 3 fantasy and framers in the championship matchups for each division this year for the tournament. So we shall see. Ryan's like, I am not. No,
he is no longer has to be considered my quote unquote nemesis because, Ryan was just pretty much beat my ass last year in about everything. Like the only saving grace I had was I stopped his undefeated streak. Oh, hooray. And that's like, he wants me to pat myself on the back. He wants me to be so happy for that. And I guess I am, but it didn't really stop his steamrolling of me last year. So I went into the season saying he was my nemesis, far from my nemesis, considered a very good friend.
Here's your rival.
But a rival, a friendly, competitive rival that I do feel good if I win because it's like with any of you guys. If I beat any of you guys,
enemies forever, Nate. Love it.
Exactly. A little bit.
All right, so who are you taking here for Giants or the Jacksonville Jaguars DST?
I'm going to take the Giants. I mean, your scoring on defense in DST scoring is going to be most leagues probably 80-20 turnovers to points allowed, yardage allowed. If the league is different than that, it can change a little bit of the scoring. But the Giants
16 sacks last 4 games.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the turnovers on the season as a whole. And you bring back Xavier McKinney, whose biggest thing that he does bring is the ball hawking mentality and a good, I would say, upside for turnovers. So, yeah, I'm definitely leaning the Giants. I would go Washington as well, I think, for the same reasons. But, man, I don't know how much I think Joey Bosa is going to come back in and make an immediate impact. But without Derwin James, I just feel like the defense is off just a touch.
And then, of course, Garrett Wilson we talked about earlier. So hopefully those plays get you those championships, Ryan. Good luck this week. Okay, let's stay with Seattle. Barton, Brooks came back to 100% snaps after leaving the game against San Francisco a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Let's see what Ryan has to say here. I say it every Sunday, but I appreciate the work you all put in. Thanks, as always. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, buddy.
Absolutely.
For the Jets, Quinton Williams just has been a beast. CJ Mosley. Going to the offensive side of the ball, though, let's go back to Seattle for a second. Geno Smith he's failed to put up 250 yards in the past couple of games. I think defenses are starting to, I don't want to say figure him out, but they're starting maybe to get to him a little bit more. A lot more pressures applied. And again, that's where that Quinton Williams play comes into effect. But if you have DK Metcalf, I mean, he is targeted obviously by default. Tyler Lockett's coming off with a broken freaking hand. So I think it's DK by default. Is Noah Fant I like this week. As good as the Jets have been, I want to say they are 10th allowed and 10th in fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. And you've seen the targets kind of get there with Gino and Noah Fant this week. So if you really need an upside play at tight end, I like Noah Fant. Anybody else have anything for this game, or can we go to Green Bay and Minnesota? Let's go to Green Bay, Minnesota. Aaron Rodgers, one of your plays this week, Keith. Why is that?
Minnesota sucks versus QBs. Sometimes you just gotta, like, we've done this on DraftKings this year to really good success, and in years past we've not. You heard Bob say it on the pod when we interviewed him, that sometimes you got to get away from the names and look at the numbers. And people get obsessed with this guy is this, and it's like, well, the reality is they're not that right this second. Minnesota is giving up 19.8 points on DK, 2 QBs per game, which is outrageous because remember, Rodgers scored 5.7 week 1. So you throw that in and they're still averaging 19.8. In recent weeks, Mac Jones, 26.28 points. That's 13 above his average. Jared Goff had 29.1. That's almost 10 points above his average. Mike White, 22.46. Daniel Jones, 24.76. Rodgers has multiple touchdowns and 9 of 14. He's another one of those guys better on the home than the road. 16.5 points per game at home, 13.85 on the road. 5 of his 6 highest point totals have came at home. And he is so due for a big game. It's unbelievable that we may get through an entire NFL season without Aaron Rodgers having a 300-yard passing game, which is just wild. Yeah. This is the best chance he's going to have to do it. I mean, this Minnesota defense is so bad. And, man, I went back and looked at it. Justin Jefferson's going to have a monster game again. Green Bay has got torched by good number 1 receivers. So I just think that means they're going to have to keep up. They're not going to be able to kind of play that slow down pace that they've been trying to do. It's going to be a lot like the Dallas game where, we saw Watson go off. I think that was the highest scoring game Rodgers has had to this point. So I just think, at 6,000, he's a good flyer and, DK, especially in bigger tournaments.
Let's talk about this running back situation for Green Bay. You mentioned it, trying to slow down the offense here as best as possible. We've seen A.J. Dillon kind of take over this backfield in terms of production in the past few weeks. Aaron Jones, he may or may not be dealing with an injury. It's just why they're not using him as much. But Keith, to your point, the fact that they're going to have to keep up, I think the reception upside for Aaron Jones kind of puts him back on the radar where he's kind of neck and neck with A.J. Dillon.
For sure, in PPR and half PPR, yeah, completely agree.
Right. Obviously, Christian Watson, you're playing.
Oh,
you don't think
I'm actually going to say I don't think I would start Christian Watson at all.
Really? Why is that?
So, first of all, he's a game time decision. So they don't even know if they're going to play him or not. And then secondarily, if he plays, it was reported this morning, at least Jamie Eisenberg and them had one of their quote unquote guys said that even if he plays, he's probably only going to play third downs.
Really?
That means I love Romeo Doubs and DK then, which was one of my plays anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say Allen Lazard I'm fine with, but I think Lazard's price tag versus Romeo Doubs' price tag is probably a difference there.
And if he doesn't play, I also actually love the ageless wonder Randall Cobb. I think he's like $3,000 this week on DK.
Yeah.
And he always seems to come through in these games when Rodgers doesn't have his receivers.
Yeah, that's good to know. I did not know that. Okay, good call, Nate.
No problem, man. Whenever I thought I heard you say that you had him at like 14 on the week earlier, and I was like, man,
totally did not catch that third down only thing. That definitely changes everything.
That was just this morning. That was not too long ago. I remember.
Yeah, they're saying he's going to have to do a pregame workout just to determine if he'll be active today.
Yeah,
he got just bumped down 10 spots, so that's good to know. Okay, cool.
Glad we do this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I am, because I'm taking him out of all my DFS lineups too.
I wish I had a lineup. I wish I had a bunch of championships. That not all of us can be you, Ryan. If you're still watching, I always have 15 teams in championships.
Or you could be like me and have 0. So
I only have one I care about, you guys, and that's the four-eyed championship, because I've already beat you guys in the head-to-head. Whatchamacallit.
Well, you're one of the few people that score more points than me, so I can't really say anything to you. But to the rest of y'all got lucky.
Exactly.
Keith's like, you come into my DFS arena, I will smoke each and every one of you.
He
I
would
do not say
crush
that.
me.
You will.
You can say that. I suck at DFS.
This is why we have you and Joe. You guys are the
Goddamn
masters
right.
here.
I mean,
The Jedi Masters.
killing it every week, crushing it. So
For IDP, obviously for the Vikings, you know who you're starting: Jefferson, Cook, even Kirk Cousins this week. Which is I say even Kirk Cousins. Like no, you started Kirk Cousins.
Hawkinson, of course. Correct.
He does scare me though. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. He this is the kind of game to me that Cousins. Like this is just
Cousins.
He's notorious for this shit, right? Like that it does scare me that he could have just an absolute Cousins game, you know.
Yeah.
But I agree, you got to start him. Like I mean, he's got Jefferson. I mean, the Packers are bad against like you have to start him, but he does scare the crap out of me.
Let's see here. Ronell says he's in 2 championship games. Nice. Very nice. For IDP purposes, I love the resurgence of Daniil Hunter here for the Minnesota Vikings. I think you roll with a hot hand here. Eric Kendricks, even though there is the back and forth, we saw this trend of Eric Kendricks, like, oh, he's primarily playing, in the box or close to the line of scrimmage, and it's Jordan Hicks who's playing more in coverage. Then all of a sudden you saw Jordan Hicks flip-flop with Eric Kendricks. Yeah. If I had to pick one of the two, though, I'd rather roll with Eric Kendricks here. That just was my take. I'm curious what you have to say about that versus Jordan Hicks.
I am always leaning Hendricks. It's just Hicks had been, I'd say uncharacteristically, man, I don't want to say inconsistent because it's playing time that was inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And it still was last week. He still didn't play. I mean, neither one of them played 100%. It was 80% and 66%. And Asamoah came in and even played 40%. Yet at the same time, Hicks came in and had his most efficient game of the season. I don't trust efficiency over 20% if it hasn't stayed that way consistently. So it's for me, Eric Kendricks as well.
All right, Don, let's get something straight here, buddy. You're taking DFS advice. You're taking great advice from Mr. Keith Fleming.
Oh, that's my boy. He's fucking with me.
Nope. But for the flip side for Green Bay, I like Devondre Campbell in this week. Can you feel comfortable rolling Quay Walker as your LB3 this week?
Probably not.
Yep, that's what I thought too.
Probably not.
Anybody else here for Green Bay that you feel 100% confident in putting in for your?
100% is a lot. 100% is a big number.
It is a big number. Triple digit, yeah.
We will hold you for what you say too, Nate. So.
Then I will say I am 88% certain that I like Preston Smith play.
Okay.
I feel like the Vikings, John DeSantis, who asked me the question earlier, asked us, I'll say, because definitely was directed with your knowledge as well, asked about a Preston Smith versus player B and pointed out that Minnesota has allowed a lot more sacks as of late. And he combined the two. They're them allowing more sacks, Preston Smith coming off a couple good weeks. I think the addition, I think Kingsley and Igbare on the other side has really help Preston Smith, and you get that interior line. So 88.5%, Preston Smith finishes with a sack this game. So there's your percentage on that. And outside of that, no, Adrian Amos is a defensive back 3-4, hoping that, what we said, it's Kirk Cousins, and he tries to push the envelope too much, and he ends up getting picked off by Amos, and that could lead to that, but that's it, buddy.
No. Right. One big news report just came across here. The Giants want to bring back Daniel Jones and Barkley, trying to work them to a long-term deal. I find one of those interesting, one of those not. Hopefully this I find that interesting. Let's go to the Battle of Los Angeles.
Call Joe, who's hungover this morning, and be like, "Hey, buddy, you're going to pay Barkley $140 million. How you feel?"
Yep.
Well, how much are you going to pay Daniel Jones is the
Well,
one.
I mean, that's what he was talking about. Was he was hoping they were going to franchise tag Barkley,
Right.
and then like Jones shouldn't. I mean, Jones ain't going to get like a massive contract on the open market. You could probably bring him back for like 25 million, which is not bad for a starting QB anymore.
Tell you what, the market for quarterback could be in a weird situation when you look at. So the 49ers have to make a decision because we saw this morning, right, about Trey Lance.
Yep.
So Lance now most likely is in a serious situation for next season, at least the beginning of the season or going in. Whatever I don't know what the ins and outs of this additional second surgery were. But you have San Francisco now with their decision. Maybe if Jimmy G's somewhere, that opens up another opportunity. Now Vegas has to make their decision. And if you had to choose, if you were on the open market and you had Jimmy G, Daniel Jones, or Carr, what's your order for who you would rather go after if you're a team in need for a quarterback?
I'd go Daniel Jones.
Depends on what team I am, to be honest.
That's fair to say. I understand that because some teams, I mean, I guess none are. I can't answer that because we don't know that. That obviously.
You know what I'm saying, though. Like,
exactly.
Right, like if I need a veteran present, just somebody that's not going to kill me, I would probably go for Jimmy G. If you're looking for somebody you can develop, it would be Daniel Jones.
Right.
Let's go now to the next game here. We got staying with LA and LA. You like Cam Akers this week. Outside of that, I don't really know on offense who for the Rams.
Higbee's been really good with Mayfield.
You're liking that matchup this week. Okay.
I just think that he's been getting so many targets. And I mean, typically it's been shocking. McVay has always historically thrown to tight ends. They run more passing routes than any tight ends in the league year after year. So it was really disappointing to see him have such a bad year. And then since Mayfield's been there, he's actually been a force. So I mean, yeah, I would feel comfortable playing him this week.
All right. Anybody else for the Rams? Are we trusting Justin Jefferson or Tutu Atwell for any PPR upside there? Nope. Okay. Sticking with the Rams, are going to the defensive side of the ball. Outside of Bobby Wagner, that's pretty much the only sure thing. Or do you think Taylor Rapp has any value here against the Chargers?
I mean, sure thing. No. Decent floor. Yeah. Okay. Just pure volume alone. I would love to say that what we've seen, Michael Hecht or Hoped or Haight or however you pronounce it, I guess.
Heck of a player. Yeah.
Heck of a he has had heck of a couple weeks as far as like highs and lows. And so he's a name that you could pay attention to if you have to start something like that. That's just bad situation altogether.
And kudos though for making the championship in your league. So on the flip side for the Chargers, I think Justin Herbert has a bounce back game. Keenan Allen has been one of the highest targeted wide receivers for him. The question here is though, maybe it's not as easy as one would think. Are you rolling with Mike Williams or Joshua Palmer this week? Let's start with Keith.
I would go with Mike Williams.
Okay. How about you, Nate?
Oh, I'm Mike Williams. Yeah.
Okay, going the big body play. Okay, cool. You're not concerned that Jalen Ramsey, who's also a big body cornerback, could be lining up against Mike Williams versus Keenan Allen this week?
He's been getting beat a good bit this year. And, I mean, the way they move him around, Ramsey isn't so much anymore of like just a follow guy. A lot of times he'll just line up on his side. I mean, really, to me, if you're going to take away a receiver in that offense, it's Keenan Allen is the one you need to. And I don't think they're going to do that.
All right. Okay. Sticking with the defensive side of the ball here, Derwin James, Josiah Lloyd Gilman come in there and play, but I can't recommend Gilman as a championship defensive back.
I think it's a Rams team that's probably not going to have good sustained drives or anything specific. I would question this offensive line as far as holding it together again. They credit a lot of that work and that cohesiveness to their center, to Coleman Shelton, who came in and really played well, according to their offensive line coaches and player personnel. But yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to throw Joey Bosa back into my championship roster just because if there's anybody that's going to have a 2 to 3 sack game,
yeah.
I mean, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack both could have nasty games. And, you know, the person who it hurts the most is probably Kyle Van Noy, who had started to really play extremely well. I really like having Van Noy out there. He was, had some good pressures, was being utilized a lot, but no, I'm probably not a big fan of too many on the Chargers side.
What about Drew Tranquil?
That was going to be the big thing, is if there's one person I have to pick, I mean, I'm definitely going to take Drew Tranquil over Kenneth Murray.
Sure.
I don't even want anything to do with Kenneth Murray or Alohi Gilman, Nasir Adderley, any of the secondary. So I would say Tranquil would be an LB3 on the week, is I think where I probably have him at. Maybe low end LB2.
Okay. And of course, I forgot to mention his name, but I shouldn't have to tell you to play Austin Eckler.
Correct.
Going to the Sunday Night Football matchup, and again, we're getting close to the 12 o'clock hour, so we'll rush through these last two games. Shouldn't be too hard to do. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Baltimore has just been playing lights out on defense. So in terms of plays this week, I'm kind of fading Najee. I feel like there's you should definitely temper your expectations if you have to play him. Chances are, though, you may not have in a good way. He may not be an option for you, so that's good. If you had to pick one, Deontay Johnson or George Pickens, though, Keith, who would you roll with?
I mean, I think you got to go with Johnson at this point. Pickens is a great story, but it's just the inconsistency to where Johnson consistently gets so many targets. And eventually he's got to score a fucking touchdown. I mean, goodness gracious. Right. But I think I'd have to lean Johnson for sure.
What about your thoughts on Freiermuth?
I don't like him this week because I don't like this situation for Pickett. I mean, you go on to Baltimore Sunday night, heated rival, a defense that's been playing really good. I know that Baltimore early in the year really struggled. I think they gave up like 4 or 5 touchdowns to tight ends in their first 6. They've only given up 2 since. I know Freiermuth was one of those, and he had a good game in their first matchup, but that was in Pittsburgh. I really think Baltimore rolls in this game.
For defense for the Steelers, Robert Spillane has kind of cemented himself there, playing majority of the snaps there. Nate, you wrote about him in your IDP waiver wire article this past week. Anybody else for Pittsburgh, though, that's jumping out to you as a must-start play? I know
TJ Watt is still a must-play. I don't care how off his season has been as a result of injury. Minkah Fitzpatrick is probably going to be I hate the must start because
Cameron Hayward.
So Cameron Hayward, yes, for me. Cameron Hayward has the one exploitable area against the Baltimore offensive line is in Ben Powers. In the middle, Tyler Linderbaum at center has played phenomenal. You have Moses and Stanley both on the ends. And I think Stanley coming off that, the knee still, I'm not 100% sold that the knee's 100% right. I think it was a knee, lower body, we'll say. And between him and Ben Powers, that side is weakened. I think that could lead to Cameron Hayward getting through, getting some pressures. I could see a sack and good run stopping ability, which he has always shown. So yeah, Cameron Hayward is one. And then, if you have Highsmith and Watt, you're probably going to start those guys because they've been so productive. Well, Highsmith has been so productive. TJ Watt's TJ Watt. You're never going to FOMO, man. You're not going to not start them and watch them on your bench blow up for, 3.5 sacks and, 3 tackles for loss.
On the flip side for Baltimore, no Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley again this week. I like J.K. Dobbins. Keith, what are your thoughts on Tyler Huntley, though, against Pittsburgh? Last time they played, he didn't have exactly a great game. Then again, he got knocked out with concussion, so you can't really rule that against the guy. What are your thoughts against him this week against the Steelers, or with him this week against the Steelers?
I hope that you do not have to play Tyler Huntley in any championship games. I got burnt a few weeks ago on the Daily Fix Pod where I was pretty much all in. I punted on a median tier QB because I liked Herbert and Huntley so much that week, and neither one of them had a good game. So they're both kind of dead to me right now. But with Huntley, just temper expectations. I'm still waiting for the big Mark Ingram or Andrews game. Oh, I said Mark Ingram.
Right.
He was so big for Huntley last year and such a heavy target and usage and just everything. And then that has just not been the case this year. So I am waiting for that breakout game. If I'm doing a captain showdown lineup, though, I'm probably going with Baltimore's defense as my captain and trying to, fill in as many different lineups as I can.
With that, let's go to the Baltimore defense. Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, week 16. Patrick Queen, 9 total tackles, half a sack, 2 quarterback hits, and pass defense. Roquan Smith, 14 tackles in TFL. Is it fair to say that both of these are must-start linebackers for you this week?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody in the secondary that we're feeling good for Baltimore, or just?
No, I mean, you can maybe make a case for Chuck Clark just because you get the feeling that if there's going to be anybody that you're going to start as far as opportunity around the ball, I think Chuck Clark has that. Pittsburgh, I could see them trying to manifest a big passing game to try to go into the last, to inflate the, oh, look how good Pickett's been. Pickett, over the last 6 weeks, PFF graded number 6 quarterback, blah, 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 blah. All the bullshit that they're saying when he's had, 190 yards passing and a touchdown and 6 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And yet his grade is good because he's showing the right things, I guess. I don't know. I don't do the evaluations as other people do. Right. And I give 100% credibility and validity to what they say. But I think that, I don't know. I don't buy into the Pittsburgh offense quite yet. So they may try to stay on the ground. That benefits Chuck Clark.
Yep. Love it. Let's go to the final game of Week 17. Buffalo.
Finally, a good Monday night game. Yeah,
probably the best Monday night game in recent years. Could be a preview of the AFC Championship, although I don't know how brackets work and how that could actually happen, so don't quote me on that. We talked about Gabe Davis's upside. Oh, right. Sorry. Got the Chiefs fan in here. Got the Gabe Davis upside play.
Football fan here.
Yeah.
He just wants the Bengals to win, and he'll be happy.
What's the track record of the Bengals versus the Chiefs in recent years, though?
The Chiefs have 1 Super Bowl to the Bengals 0. So what were you saying? What is that?
Yep. Okay, fair enough. So Buffalo, Gabe Davis for a big upside play, but obviously Josh Allen, Diggs are your 1-2 combo here with the Gabe Davis upside play here. Dawson Knox should have a good game versus Cincinnati as well.
Another guy that's winning freaking fantasy leagues. It pisses me off. He does nothing all year and then starts catching fire right at the end of the season.
Then we got on the flip side for Cincinnati. Can you make the case for Samaje Perine as being a flex option for you just because how it's been kind of like a 1-2 punch for the Mixon?
The only thing is last week he didn't really see the ball at all, which does scare me. Because it looks like they went back to just the Mixon show and a bigger game. But I mean, if you're talking about for a single game showdown lineup, yeah, I love those kind of plays because he's cheaper. He's not going to be high owned. And he's shown he doesn't have to get a ton of touches to do some damage. And he seems to have a nose for the end zone. So,
all right. So Burrow, Mixon potentially for those circumstances. And Keith just brought up for Samaje Perine. Jamar Chase. Is T. Higgins back this week? I think he is, right, guys? So Higgins, love that. I saw that Hayden Hurst may be back or was
he's back. Yeah, he doesn't even have an injury designation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about that in this matchup here. Yeah, I don't know if I'm feeling Hayden Hurst this week, his first week back from injury.
Against the Bills, they've been so good against tight ends.
Really good.
Yeah, like 29th or 4th, depending upon which way you want to look at that.
Right. On the flip side, for the defensive side of the ball, Gregory Rousseau should have a field day. I wrote about him in our IDP starts column. He's since week 14, 10 pressures, 2 sacks, a 14.8% win rate. And it would have been great if he was going against Lyle Collins, who's just been a sieve for the Bengals offensive line. He's out for the season with an injury. Akeem Adeniji should be filling in his spot. And this week, and I keep bringing this up on the various spots I talk about him, the defensive lineman coach said this week of Adeniji, well, he's basically the only option we got left. And he wasn't saying that in a complimentary way.
He played. You remember he was the one that filled in for guard last year for the Bengals and got absolutely roasted. And now they have him at tackle.
Yeah,
not good.
Not good at all. Obviously, you're starting Jordan Poyer. I even think Matt Milano, just the way they use Bengals, they use Mixon bouncing to the outside. Aside from that, who else do we like in this game for IDP purposes?
I mean, a name to potentially monitor is, I don't even want to say monitor. I mean, Logan Wilson's been the hottest player.
Logan Wilson, excuse me. Yeah.
I just don't even want to. Yeah, it's like I feel bad not mentioning a person's name because I don't want people to think that I wasn't gonna. But Logan Wilson has been so good as of late.
Right.
You were never not going to start him, but
right.
Both those guys on the ends, of course. I really like from a defensive tackle perspective, if you could get pressure anywhere, it'd be up the middle for Buffalo, and DJ Reader would be great, but I'm never going to start anybody like that. And so outside of on that side, Gregory Rousseau, I mean, nothing stands out as like a surprise play that you wouldn't already be playing.
Gotcha. And with that, that's going to wrap up our Week 17 pregame show and our last pregame show of the fantasy football season. We did it, guys. We made it. Hopefully, all you all that we give advice to today and all season long, it's helped you, and it's got to this point where you're in contention for a fantasy football championship.
If it didn't, Jorge, they're probably not listening at this point anyway. So,
well, we got some good questions here. So,
no, I'm saying that if our advice did not help them throughout the season, I doubt they're still listening by week 17.
That's true.
That is a very good point. We appreciate all your patronage on the various social media channels, visiting the website, reading our articles, asking the questions, looking at our rankings. Everything we do here has been very much consumed by you all, and we appreciate that, and we look forward to helping you next year, or this year, I should say. We're in 2023, but we're not done at Fantasy and Frames. We got DFS all the way through the Super Bowl, then Dynasty content's going to be picking up, and then before you know it, rookie player evaluations. Then come August, we're back in this mode. So thank you very much for all your support, Nate, Keith. You all have just been amazing all year long in 2022, and looking forward to what we can do together as a group in 2023. Any parting words for y'all before we head out?
I hope I win a bunch of money today in DFS and go Dogs.
There you go.
What about you, Nate?
You have pushed me to the brink of exhaustion and death, hence why I've been sick all week. But that's the sacrifice and the dedication I have to everybody. I will continue to get better and no, I'm kidding. I just a little sissy, and I don't take illness well.
No guys do, so don't.
No guys. I
My
know
wife
exactly.
talks about it all the time. She's like, "You're the biggest sissies."
Good news, bad news, whatever. As Carrie was sick right next to me the whole time. If anybody has any show recommendations or needs any like TV guides written, we can do that now. We have watched pretty much every show under the sun.
Isn't it great though, kind of when you get to do that?
Hey, I'm not gonna. I mean, don't get me wrong. The sickness sucked.
But I'm saying, like, you go to binge and catch up on stuff.
We did really good. We'll have to discuss that later. But nope, that's it, man. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everybody. Have a great week.
See you guys. Happy New Year.